Alaska, the largest and most sparsely populated state in the United States, is a land of vast wilderness, towering mountains, and icy expanses. But beyond its breathtaking landscapes lies a realm of mystery and intrigue, earning it a reputation as a hotbed of enigma and legend. No description of strange happenings in the heart of the last frontier would be complete without reports of an anomaly structure emitting unexplained energy buried deep underground in the Alaskan wilderness, somewhere between Nome and Mt. McKinley. And according to many sources, the U.S. government then sealed off the area and silenced all those involved. However, despite facing the risk of being court-martialed for treason, veteran intelligence officer Douglas Muckler bravely spoke out, unveiling the existence of a colossal pyramid constructed entirely of black granite in the heart of Alaska that was not shown on any map or satellite imagery. What secrets are kept within this mysterious structure? Join us as we dig deep into the massive pyramid from the corners of Alaska that has got the U.S. government panicking. Alaska's history is riddled with unsolved mysteries, adding to its reputation as a hub of intrigue. So, whether it's the allure of the unknown, the thrill of discovery, or the fear of the unexplained, Alaska becomes a hotbed of mystery, beckoning those brave enough to venture into its enigmatic depths. As a result, every year in Denali National Park and Preserve, formerly known as Mount McKinley National Park, a national park and preserve located in interior Alaska, the National Park Service, or NPS, responds to hundreds of cases just like this. A hiker gets lost, is quickly reported, and is found within 24 hours. Case closed. But very rarely, the search comes up empty-handed. A backpacker in Sequoia Kings Canyon takes a detour and never returns. A tourist mysteriously walks away from his car and disappears into the Yosemite wilderness. Despite helicopters, scent dogs, and search teams, sometimes people seem to simply vanish. That's when the Investigative Services Branch, ISB, or FBI of the National Park Service, steps in. The special agents of the ISB investigate cold cases, the missing persons and unsolved crimes that slip through the cracks of normal NPS law enforcement. Though it sounds romantic, or like a bad TV show, detectives in flat hats dusting for fingerprints around Old Faithful, it's not an easy job. The abundant wildlife and bad weather of many national parks wreaks havoc on physical evidence. Even after a long search, all the ISB may have to go on is a few fragments of a torn tent, some hiker's hazy eyewitness report, or in one of their recent cases, the story of one man's search for a giant alien pyramid buried deep in the Alaskan wilderness. On May 27, 2020, 41-year-old Nathan Campbell hired a charter plane out of Talkeetna to fly him to a small lake in the northwest corner of Denali National Park. Along with some basic camping gear, Campbell brought a hefty cache of food, stored in plastic tubs, and a two-way satellite communicator to check in with his wife and kids. He planned to spend the next 4 months alone, smack dab in the center of interior Alaska. But Campbell wasn't there for fun. He was on a mission. On the long flight from Talkeetna to Carey Lake, while the vast green carpet of the boreal forest floated beneath them, the usually shy Campbell told his pilot Jason Sturgis how he planned to spend his summer. Campbell had come to Carey Lake to search for something that, until now, only existed in the darkest, least updated corners of the internet. The Black Pyramid, a massive underground structure rumored to be 4 times the size of the famous Cheops in Egypt and thousands, if not millions of years old. Conspiracy theorists claim the structure is so powerful, its importance to national security so tantamount, that all traces of the pyramid and the military base believed to protect it have been wiped from satellite imagery. Although bush pilots, trappers, and natives had traveled the area around Carey Lake for generations, a quick search through the Fairbanks Daily News minor archives shows few references to a giant alien pyramid or top-secret base in central Alaska. But then again, until Nathan Campbell showed up, no one had been really looking for it, and his reasons for starting his search deep in the Alaskan wilderness, if you follow the nebulous logic of conspiracy theory, make perfect sense. First, the Black Pyramid fits neatly into the pantheon of paranoid, inducing military installations in Alaska. The most infamous of these is the High-Frequency Active Auroral Research Program, or HAARP, located just outside of Fairbanks. Depending on who you ask, HAARP is a high-frequency transmitter used to remotely set off earthquakes, to topple Venezuelan dictators, control the world's climate and undermine the fossil fuel industry, or help scientists study the ionosphere. Second, the supposed location of the Black Pyramid has long been recognized as an area of geostrategic importance. In the 1930s, General Billy Mitchell, the so-called father of the U.S. Air Force, saw that Lake Minchumina, about 40 miles north of where Campbell landed at Kerry Lake, was equidistant to the major urban industrial centers of the Northern Hemisphere. That meant, with the same tank of fuel, a B-52 taking off from the shores of Lake Minchumina could strike Tokyo, Beijing, Moscow, Paris, or even New York. In modern warfare, General Mitchell had shown that the middle of nowhere could become the center of everything. Then, in the early 90s, came the real evidence for the Black Pyramid. Scientists studying shock waves from a 1992 Chinese underground nuclear test recorded a grainy, pyramid-shaped spot of interference 700 below the surface of interior Alaska. But its age, origin, and function are still unknown. The existence of the Black Pyramid was not confirmed until July 26, 2012, when veteran journalist and UFO specialist Linda Moulton Howe reported its discovery on the Coast to Coast AM radio show, despite claims of its ancient origins. Linda Moulton Howe conducted a study in which she reported that the Alaska Triangle is a zone where ships, planes, and people have disappeared. She estimated that 18,000 individuals had gone missing in that area since 1988. On the evening of that day, Linda Moulton Howe aired a pre-recorded conversation with Doug Muckler, a retired U.S. Army counterintelligence agent, who described the events leading to the uncovering of the pyramid and revealed the connection between the location and the U.S. military. Muckler was transferred from Alaska to Fort Meade, home of the National Security Agency, where he confirmed the pyramid story using classified information. He stated, "I searched for information on archaeological sites or underground facilities in Alaska, but I didn't mention pyramids specifically. I was told that any information about it could be in X, Y, or Z containers," he said. "So I went over there and looked around. I didn't find anything about pyramids, but I did come across some information about Alaska from 2 different vaults. I had just sat down when 2 people approached me and said, 'You don't need to know this stuff.'" Muckler asserts that a local NBC affiliate aired a report about the discovery of the building about 6 months after the explosion, but when he attempted to reach out to the station for a copy of the report, they denied it had been broadcasted and stated that they did not have a copy to provide. However, things took an unexpected turn the day after Linda Moulton Howe's interview with Muckler. The son of a former Western Electric engineer contacted her to confirm Muckler's claims and provide additional information. The new source informed Howe that between 1959 and 1961, his father had worked on a powerful electrical system emanating from a massive underground pyramid of unknown origin in Alaska, according to the new witnesses' accounts. After the war, his father studied electrical engineering and physics in college. He was then selected by the military to be part of a team of experts to study and work in an underground structure in Alaska called the Black Pyramid, as he described it. He repeatedly emphasized how highly the government valued this project and the measures they took to keep it concealed. He had thought it was a military base, but it was actually a research project focused on energy distribution. He went on to become a primary information provider for AT&T, which was a precursor to today's web and cell phone technologies. In his later years, he would often complain about his electricity bill saying it could be free if people only knew the truth. That means he knew much more than we thought, but sadly, we'll never know it. As he mentioned, it was all confidential information. There may not be any available records. If the pyramid discovered in 1992 is true, the government may have known about it well before then and taken great efforts to keep it hidden. Linda Moulton Howe states that an ancient pyramid can be found approximately 80 kilometers southwest of Mount McKinley. It is believed to have been constructed by a highly advanced civilization that is currently unknown to us. Secret bases, government cover-ups, global warfare, ancient aliens, and pyramid power, everything came together to create the story of the Black Pyramid. The story that Campbell, if he followed any of the internet lore, surely planned his summer vacation around. Sadly, somewhere out there he got himself into trouble. On October 1st, 2020, Campbell was declared missing. Wherever he is, hopefully he found what he was looking for. Somewhere, deep in the Alaskan wilderness, the search for the Black Pyramid continues on. Notably, similar to Black Pyramid, the Alaska Triangle has sparked a lot of speculation and conspiracy theories. First named in 1972, the Alaska Triangle stretches from Anchorage in south-central Alaska to Juneau in the southeast panhandle to Utqiagvik on Alaska's northern coast. Since 1988, more than 16,000 people have vanished from this area, and every year, approximately 4 people go missing per every 1,000 Alaska residents. This rate is twice the national average. Dramatically, many disappearances and other mysteries in Alaska have never been solved. Planes vanish, boats disappear, UFO sightings baffle military officers, and in one instance, the population of an entire village fled their homes to escape a giant, hairy, man-like creature. Here are a few of the stories. 1. The mysterious disappearance of the plane carrying House Majority Leader Hale Boggs and Alaska Representative Nick Begich. In 1972, Hale Boggs agreed to help Nick Begich campaign for Begich's re-election to the House of Representatives. On the morning of October 16, 1972, Boggs, Begich's special assistant Russell Brown, and pilot Don Jones departed Anchorage in a Cessna C-310 aircraft for an estimated 3-hour, 30-minute flight to Juneau and a planned election rally. The weather forecast en route was marginal with turbulence, low visibility, and icing conditions. Johns was an experienced pilot but had a reputation as a risk-taker. Johns called the tower 10 minutes after takeoff, but neither he nor his passengers were ever heard from again. An hour after the Cessna C-310 failed to land in Juneau, an intensive search ensued and lasted 39 days. 400 aircraft searched for any sign of the downed plane, but nothing was found then nor since. Conspiracy theories swirled around the apparent deaths of Boggs and Begich. The most prominent of these suggested J. Edgar Hoover had a bomb placed on the plane to silence Boggs, whom some suspected wanted to reopen the Kennedy assassination investigation. For proponents of the Alaska Triangle theory, this is the most famous case to support their beliefs. Alaska has some of the most intimidating terrain and geography on the planet. Huge mountains covered by glaciers pockmarked with deep crevasses and canyons descend into heavily forested slopes, and these, in turn, plunge into the North Pacific Ocean. Couple this daunting landscape with challenging weather conditions, and you can understand how and why small planes disappear in the 49th state. Planes started vanishing in Alaska as soon as humans began to fly them here. Sometimes, hikers find wreckage from a downed plane decades after it disappeared, or a fisherman spots a seat cushion washed onto the shore, hinting to the final resting spot of the aircraft. Other times, though, as in the case of the Boggs-Begich flight, searchers never find a scrap of material or metal, and the fate of the plane and its occupants remains a mystery. 2. Douglas, C-54. Skymaster vanishes into thin air. At 11:15 a.m., Atlantic Standard Time on January 26, 1950, a Douglas C-54D Skymaster, the military version of the Douglas DC-4, departed Elmendorf Air Force Base in Anchorage, headed for Great Falls, Montana. The plane held 36 passengers and 8 crewmen. The passengers included 2 military dependents, the pregnant wife of an Air Force Master Sergeant, and her young son, but the rest of the passengers were military personnel. The flight from Anchorage to Great Falls was scheduled to take 8.5 hours. The pilot expected good weather with clear skies for most of the journey. The excellent visibility afforded the passengers a view of some of the most ruggedly beautiful scenery on the planet. The pilots reported their position to the various communication stations as they passed over them. After 2 hours, the Skymaster passed over the Alaska border and into the Yukon Territory of Canada. When the plane crossed over the Snag radio range located near Beaver Creek, Yukon Territory, the pilot called the station and estimated the aircraft would reach the next reporting point at Aishihik in 20 minutes. His call sounded routine. He did not mention any problems with the plane, and the weather remained favorable. The Aishihik station heard no call from the C-54, and no other transmissions from the aircraft were received. When the C-54 failed to arrive in Great Falls, Montana, officials listed it as missing. An intensive search involving the U.S. Army, U.S. Air Force, Canadian military, and civilian aircraft failed to find any clues about what happened to the Douglas C-54D Skymaster. A Canadian forest ranger reported seeing a low-flying plane on January 26th, traveling about 40 miles southwest of Snag. He said the airplane suddenly disappeared, and he heard a loud explosion followed by columns of black smoke. Searchers found this sighting credible, but they found no evidence of a downed airplane in the area the ranger indicated. Other reported sightings of the C-54 sent investigators in several different directions, but they found no remnant of the missing plane. Experts believe whatever happened to the Skymaster was both sudden and catastrophic, and structural failure, navigational error, or crew incapacitation must have caused the accident. Those who believe in the Alaska Triangle might suggest other reasons. 3. Alan Foster, September 9, 2013. This is one of the most recent tragic airplane disappearances in Alaska. Alan Foster, a professional charter pilot with more than 9,000 hours of flight time, was flying his recently purchased PA-32-360 airplane from Atlanta to Anchorage. He was only 360 miles from home when he landed in Yakutat, Alaska, to refuel. After he departed Yakutat, he called the Juneau Flight Service for a weather update, telling them he would stay in Cordova if it wasn't good enough to make it to Anchorage. 18 minutes later, radar showed a transponder target confirmed as Foster's plane at 100 feet. The aircraft was never seen again, and despite an extensive search, no one has ever cited any sign of Foster or his plane. One of the problems searchers encountered was Foster failed to register an ELT beacon for his aircraft. Perhaps this was something he planned to do when he returned home to Anchorage. But no description of strange happenings in the Alaska Triangle would be complete without reports of UFO sightings, and one of the best documented UFO encounters ever recorded occurred in the airspace near Fairbanks on November 17, 1986. This sighting was significant because of who saw it and what they saw, and because military radar recorded the event. Japan Airlines Flight, or JL Flight 1628, was en route from Paris to Tokyo with a cargo of Beaujolais wine. The flight was scheduled to refuel in Reykjavik and in Anchorage. At 5:09 p.m. on November 17, 1986, JAL 1628, under the control of Captain Kenju Terauchi, was about 104 miles northeast of Fort Yukon. The flight controller asked the pilot to adjust his heading to fly south of Fort Yukon and Fairbanks. The co-pilot complied and turned the plane left about 15 degrees. Meanwhile, Captain Terauchi, seated on the cockpit's left side, saw bright lights shining through his window. The lights were to the left and below JAL 1628, and Tarauchi assumed they were military planes. The captain ignored the lights until he realized they were keeping pace with his aircraft. Tarauchi quickly contacted the anchorage center and asked if any other aircraft, either civilian or military, were in the vicinity of his plane. The anchorage center flight controller said there were no military aircraft in the area, and ground radar did not show any air traffic other than Flight 1628. At that moment, the lights began moving erratically. They suddenly appeared directly in front of the JAL plane, and Tarauchi said the inside of the cockpit shined brightly, and he felt the warmth of the UFO's thrusters on his face. Tarauchi said he and his crew were not immediately frightened, but instead watched in amazement as the lights pulsed and kept pace with the jumbo jet. When Tarauchi reported the strange lights, the Anchorage Center controller said he saw nothing on his radar. The plane's radar, though, showed a large, green, round object 7 to 8 miles away. When the cargo plane arrived above Eielson Air Force Base near Fairbanks, it was a clear night, and the bright city lights lit up the sky. Tarauchi looked out his window and saw the silhouette of a gigantic spaceship following their plane. He later said the UFO was twice the size of an aircraft carrier. He could only guess this was the mothership of the smaller UFOs the plane had previously encountered. The massive, unidentified aircraft struck fear in Tarauchi, and he attempted evasive maneuvers to avoid it. The UFO mirrored his every move. The Anchorage Center controller offered to scramble a military jet, but Tarauchi declined, fearing the enormous spaceship would consider such an action confrontational. When a United Airlines passenger jet flew into the area near the JL cargo plane, the air traffic controller asked the United flight crew to get a visual of the situation. Tarauchi said that as soon as the United Airlines plane arrived, the UFO disappeared, and he did not see it again. 1 week after the JAL 1628 incident, John Callahan, the FAA Division Chief of Accidents and Investigations in Washington, D.C., received a call from a flight control supervisor in Anchorage. The Anchorage flight controller told Callahan that the Anchorage FAA office was full of media and asked him what they should do. Callahan asked what happened, and the Anchorage official replied, "It's the UFO." Callahan asked, "What UFO?" The Anchorage official explained that a week earlier, a UFO chased a 747 across Alaska's skies for approximately 30 minutes. Callahan told his Anchorage associate to get the data together and immediately ship it to him in Washington, D.C. Callahan said he wanted everything, including the radar recordings and the recordings between the controller on the ground and Captain Tarauchi. Callahan also contacted the military, but the Air Force refused to send their tapes. When Callahan received the tapes, he listened to the three-way conversation between Anchorage Air Traffic Control, or ATC, Elmendorf Air Force Base's NORAD Regional Operations Control Center, and Captain Tarauchi on JAL 1628. He also played the tape of the ATC radar sightings. Callahan noted there was no sign of the UFOs on the ATC radar. Still, from listening to the conversation, it was clear those at Elmendorf with their more sophisticated radar saw the UFOs and were tracking their maneuvers. The military controller noted the UFOs were traveling at thousands of miles per hour as they swirled around the 747. One of the most surprising findings Callahan discovered was near the end of the incident when the United Airlines flight arrived. At that moment, Captain Tarauchi no longer saw the giant UFO, and the United pilot never saw the craft. Military radar, though, clearly showed the UFO, and it had tucked in behind the United flight and began following it. No one at Elmendorf's NORAD Regional Operations Control Center notified the United crew to inform them a giant, unidentified aircraft was following them. Callahan's boss told him not to tell anyone about the UFO incident until they could meet with intelligence and security personnel. The following day, his boss set up a briefing. The meeting included 3 FBI agents, 3 CIA agents, and Ronald Reagan's scientific study team. Callahan and his staff presented everything they had and answered questions. When the meeting concluded, one of the CIA agents swore the participants to secrecy and told them this meeting never happened. The agents admitted the UFOs were not stealth bombers or any other military aircraft type. The CIA agents told Callahan they could not release this information to the American public because it would cause a panic. The CIA confiscated all the original voice recordings and radar tapes connected to the UFO incident, but they did not know Callahan had copies of everything at his office. Callahan said he believed Captain Terauchi saw 3 UFOs, and Reagan's scientific team agreed with him. They said this was the only time a UFO was recorded on radar for such an extended period. Commercial airline pilots again reported UFO sightings in Alaska's skies in January 1987, little more than 2 months after Captain Terauchi claimed he and his crew saw 3 UFOs. On January 29, 1987, the crew of Alaska Airlines Flight 53 sighted a fast-moving object on their onboard weather radar. The plane was flying at 35,000 feet and was approximately 60 miles west of McGrath on a flight from Nome to Anchorage. The crew calculated the UFO was moving at a speed of 18,000 miles per hour as it sped away from them. On January 30, 1987, a U.S. Air Force KC-135 jet traveling from Anchorage to Fairbanks sighted a huge UFO. Still, other than the recording of the conversation between the Air Force crew and Anchorage Center, little was relayed about this sighting. Over the years, individuals have reported countless other UFOs in the skies over Alaska, but none as well documented as the sighting by the crew of JAL 1628. Since 1998, there have been more than 560 UFO sightings reported in Alaska. In addition, hundreds of people have wandered into the Alaska wilderness and were never seen again. Some of these individuals come to Alaska unprepared for the harsh climate, rugged landscape, and wild animals, but even experienced outdoorsmen, mountain climbers, and boaters disappear here. Richard Lyman Griffiths from Spokane, Washington, invented a wilderness survival cocoon, and in the summer of 2006, he headed into the wilderness of southeast Alaska to test his invention. No one reported him missing for a year. When authorities began searching for him, they learned a bus dropped off Griffiths along the Alaska Highway. He stopped at a lodge near the White River, where he left some of his gear and told people he planned to hike upriver to McCarthy, a small town in the Wrangell St. Elias National Park. He was never seen again. Since Griffiths told friends he might spend the winter in Alaska, no one worried about him for several months. But finally, a friend called the Canadian Mounties and reported him missing. His friend had no idea where Griffiths was planning to go to test his wilderness cocoon. No trace has ever been found of Griffiths or his bright orange cocoon. Mountain climbing is a dangerous pursuit. In addition to Mt. Denali, the highest peak in North America, Alaska boasts many of the most challenging mountains and glaciers any daring alpinist could hope to conquer. Mountain climbers die every year in Alaska, but most climbers ascend in groups. If 1 or 2 members of the group tragically fall into a crevasse, their companions can tell the story about what happened to them. When a solo climber makes a fatal mistake, no one is there to record the details, and experts can only guess what happened. In 1984, Naomi Uemura, a famous Japanese adventurer and mountain climber, attempted a solo winter ascent of Denali. Uemura had already successfully summited Denali on his own, but he wanted to try a more challenging climb in the winter. He made it to the top on February 13, 1984, but something happened on his descent, and he never returned to base camp. Conditions near the top of Denali when Uemura disappeared included high winds and a temperature of minus 46 degrees Celsius. Such brutal conditions leave little room for human error. More recently, on March 7, 2018, 2 experienced climbers, Ryan Johnson and Marc-Andre Leclerc, failed to return from a climb on a 7-peaked mountain near Juneau. However, in this instance, searchers found a clue hinting at the fate of the 2 men. They found an intact anchor rope at the top of an ice chute on one peak, and then saw 2 climbing ropes in a crevasse, midway down the same peak. A spokesperson for the Alaska State Troopers said the evidence showed the climbers made it to the top and set an anchor. Then, she said, they were either taken out by an avalanche, a rope failed, or something else catastrophic occurred. As you see, there's no question more people, planes, and boats disappear in Alaska than anywhere else in the United States. Is something strange happening here? Or is this just a dangerous place with huge mountains, treacherous glaciers, roaring rivers, and violent storms? We just don't know. But the allure of the unknown itself continues to captivate the imagination of many, leading to ongoing speculation and fascination with the mysteries of the Alaska Triangle. That's all the information that we have for you today. Don't forget to give us a thumbs up if you enjoyed today's episode, subscribe if you haven't already, and hit the bell so you never miss out on future episodes. And be sure to also tell us what you think about today's content. Everyone's support motivates us to continue delivering quality content and to always improve. As always, thanks for watching, and we will see you next time. We will see you next time. We will see you next time.